Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for all the ones that have joined for the first time as well. I hope you enjoyed. I'm Carlos. This is the Product Book Club, where we meet once a month. We pick a book. Most of us read it, and then we discuss it. Sometimes with the author, but also sometimes between us. And today we're discussing the Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olsen. Right? So this is the book. If you don't have it. And like a very, very, very quick summary, it's a book that talks about, the main things that it talks about the lean product process, right? That it covers things, from...
Dan is joining now. I'm admitting it. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So let's wait for him.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, hello. Can you see us? Oh yeah, I see your camera now.
1 sec, I gotta switch cameras. Hold on. There we go. How's it going?
Hello. Good. And you?
Good.
Good. Thanks for joining.
Sure, my pleasure.
Yeah, I was just about to tell everyone like 30 seconds summary about the book, which, from what I see and I remember is, mainly about the lean product process that covers how you determine the target customers, right? How do you identify the underserved needs, define the product strategy, define the MVP, and then also how you test it, how you test your MVP, how you land your metrics, and also how you have that learning feedback loop and iterating on it, right? Mm-hmm. But Dan, now that you're with us, also welcome again. Maybe we can start with also yourself making a quick intro for everyone.
Me?
Yes, please.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Dan Olsen. I am calling you from Menlo Park in Silicon Valley, California. Let's see. What can I tell you? My story probably starts when my parents got me a computer when I was 9 years old. So I'm glad that they did, because I became very comfortable with computers. Then I became an electrical engineering major in college. And my first job was actually designing nuclear submarines, which was a lot of fun. And then I moved out here to get an MBA at Stanford, and I've been out here ever since. And it was a business school that I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after business school, and I learned about this not so well-known career called product management. Back then, it wasn't as well known, and it sounded awesome. And so I asked everybody, since I had never done it, I said, "Hey, where's the best place to learn product management?" And everybody said Intuit. And so Intuit is a US company that makes personal finance software, QuickBooks accounting, TurboTax, and Quicken personal finance. So I was fortunate to get a job there, and I learned a lot about product management there. I walked into a machine. They've been around already for 15 years before I got there doing the product. So I walked into a machine. I learned a lot. After working into it, I wanted to take what I learned and apply it at startups. So I went and was a product leader at a few startups. I started my own startup at one point. And then around 2007, I got into speaking. Actually spoke for the first time at a Stanford class that BJ Fogg. I just hosted BJ Fogg. I don't know if some of you guys know his book, Tiny Habits. Mm-hmm. He's a very sharp professor, researcher from Stanford. Anyway, and then wrote the book in 2000. Started writing the book in 2014 and published it in 2015. And since 2005, I've been consulting and helping product teams with a lot of different things, helping them apply the principles that I've learned here, that I taught in my book. And then I also, for the last 6.5 years, almost 7 years now, have run a community out here in Silicon Valley called Lean Product Meetup, where I bring in top speakers. And with COVID, we took that online in March. So I'll share that link with people in the chat or something if you want to learn about it. So anyway, that's a quick summary, not so quick summary about me, but that's what I'm about.
Thank you. Yeah, and please share the link so that then everyone can also check.
Sure.
Cool. For the others that is the first time joining as well, as I mentioned, please feel free anytime to make questions. Of course, don't interrupt if someone else is speaking. But yeah, please feel free to make questions, and let's try to make this as a discussion. I had a first question maybe to kick off things. One of the things that I really like or enjoyed from the book was that it does not only tells you about the process to follow, but it also gives you a lot of frameworks, right? Like the importance versus satisfaction framework, then, how to define the metrics, sorry, the formula for your business and defining metrics. So it was something very tangible for me that, right the next day I could go and apply it and do it, and even now I still do a lot of these things. But since launching the book, are there any other like frameworks or maybe things that you have received feedback that, I don't know, like new frameworks, maybe that now, for example, you think would be worth adding, or maybe like improvements or things that, maybe you have heard from everyone that has read the book and applied all
Carlos,
these
didn't
tools?
my book have enough frameworks for you, man? So many frameworks in there. Come on, you want more? You're killing me. I'm joking. No, actually, I think the opposite. I think that they're kind of like evergreen. Now, a couple things I will share, because the book is quite long. It's 350 pages. So it's more that I kind of, I improved a little bit and had some case studies that I didn't have in the book, basically. That's more what I would say, but there's not any new frameworks really. It's really more just like, for example, in value proposition, I was pressed for time and I just had a generic example in there. And now in my workshops that I teach, I actually have 2 examples that are specific examples about Uber and Instagram that are very helpful, I think, to make it. So what I like to do is I like to introduce a framework and then use an example to illustrate it, basically, right? And in the value prop, I did a little bit of that, but not as much as I would have liked. And then the other big thing is the importance and satisfaction. Let me pull up my slides real quick. I'll pull up a couple slides and share my screen with you.
Sure.
Is I always wanted a way to visualize the opportunity score. And it was in 2019, I was working on a workshop and I finally came up with a way to do that. So let me pull it up here. There we go. I can share that. So I was pretty excited when I did that, because I was just, it was 14 months to write the book, and I just didn't have time to kind of do those. Those are the 2 things that I was hoping to do that I just did not have time to do. And then after the book came out, I did have time. So here we go. Yeah, cool. This is let me share my screen real quick. I'll show this to y'all. So this, I was really excited. I'll back up. The importance and satisfaction. So it's interesting. Yeah, can you enable screen sharing, Carlos, please?
Yes.
In the security tab, thanks.
Timur, you are the host now. Can you?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yes, I've enabled it now.
Thanks. Okay, sure. Cool. So this is the importance and satisfaction framework, right? We got how important is user need, low to high, how satisfied are people? The bottom 2 quadrants not worth going after. Upper right quadrant is competitive market. Upper left quadrant is opportunities. And I said, hey, you can, basically the closer you are to that upper left corner, the bigger the opportunity to create customer value. And I wrote out the formula. This is all in the book about how the formula for that area of the rectangle to the right. If I jump back to this guy, or basically the area of the rectangle to the right of wherever the best product is the opportunity to create customer value. Well, I finally created a visualization of it, which I'm excited about. So that's this one, where it's a heat map. And it basically shows you that, again, the closer you are to this upper left corner, the stronger it is. And the bigger the opportunity score is. And it goes from 0 to 1. And it just also reinforces that the bottom left quadrant, the bottom right quadrant, the upper right quadrant, it's low. So that's an example of something that I've added since the book. So.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks. Does one of the others have a question or something maybe they would like to comment to get things rolling?
I have maybe one question regarding the segmentation.
Okay.
So I was actually reading the chapter about the segmentation, but the thing is, the product I'm trying to develop right now is, let's say, something which doesn't really exist in the market. So in that case, I find it a bit more difficult to define my target customers, because I did some user tests, and in fact, there's not really right now from the users I interviewed, there's not really a need, right? So I'm not sure like if I should abandon the project or just keep on refining and try to find my target customer. But right now, let's say I wasn't able to find somebody who is my target customer.
Well, out of all the stuff you said, the thing that I picked up the most on is you said there's no need. And so what I assume you mean by that is when you talk to people, they're like, nah, I'm not too excited about that. Is that what happened?
It's not necessarily that, but it's more, let's say, it's a privacy related app, which, let's say, right now there's not so much need about it, but I'm pretty sure that in the future there will be. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's always tough though. You're like, if people, the best thing you can do is have buddies. That's why the importance of satisfaction framework. What I was about to say earlier is, I love all my frameworks, but the one that if I had to pick one that like helps people like make sure they're delivering customer value, it's the importance versus satisfaction one. Because what you're telling me is, hey, Dan, people are saying it's not important right now, but I just know any day now it's going to become high importance for them. It's my hypothesis. And that's just a little scary. That's risky. I'd much rather target something where somebody says, no, that's high importance to me right now. Like that, that I can tell you right now. So it's just risky. It's just a risky proposition. I'd rather find a need that people will acknowledge that is a need right now, that they have right now. Now, the other thing you could do, the other possibility is back to segmentation. There might be people that really, really care about that, need more than other people. And so I think you said it's about privacy. So maybe there's like a small segment of people that are really sensitive to privacy. And that just means you gotta, and I don't know if that's the case or not. That's a hypothesis, that's a conjecture that there might be a segment of people. And so you can try to find people that are care more about privacy. But if even they go, I don't really have that need yet, then I would not continue to pursue it. I don't know. That's my high level take on the limited information that we've got here.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll try to recruit privacy sensitive users then and see what's their feedback.
And you can just ask a simple question like, well, it'll be self-fulfilling. It'll be like, how important is privacy to you? And you only talk to the people that say hi. At least that we'll see. At least it'll help. If even those people don't see the need, then I would pivot for sure. I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question? How many people read the book this month?
I'm halfway.
All right. Or I know it's long. I know it's long. Okay. I read
it years ago.
Yeah,
okay,
not this month earlier.
Most of it.
That's fine. Okay, good. Okay, cool. Well, I'd love to hear real quick, if it's okay, any feedback you have. Part of the benefit of this, the crazy thing is you sit, by yourself, you write a book, you publish it, and really the main feedback you get is like a few Amazon reviews that people leave, but you don't actually have qualitative like discussions, interactive discussions with people that read your book. So I'd love to hear any thoughts people had on it, or any surprises or anything like that.
Hi, Dan. I really like, just to start, I really like the name of the book. I thought Playbook was like an excellent way. I really see this as a book that's sitting on the shelf, right? And can kind of be taken off at whatever you are, like in your career, or if like, oh, how did he conduct customer discovery again, and kind of going back to that. So I thought the playbook kind of analogy really, bode well. And I think it'll be something that, again, kind of sits on the shelf and is taken off whenever certain situation comes up. One question that I had was, I'm coming from an organization that's pretty immature in their product practices. And aside from kind of the build portion, a lot of the, operations pieces and even customer discovery pieces aren't necessarily there, or even have time allocated to conduct those. They just want to build.
Sure.
My question is how do you kind of come into an organization and instill these principles and kind of allow time, to conduct customer discovery and have that lead kind of, into the lean process? Like any kind of tips there?
Yeah. And hey, Al, you didn't have a space in your name, so I didn't realize. I'm like, oh, it's Al. Okay, cool. Nice. So you're at Carnegie Mellon right now, is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Cool.
I was
Awesome.
at Optum.
Nice. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I just did a workshop for Optum in October. So
Cool.
yeah, nice to meet you, man. And yeah, on the first point, I just want to cover. Thanks a lot. It's so funny. I kind of brainstormed and I did research on the title, and I love the word playbook. It's just a little funny how many now books since then use the word playbook in the title. If you keep your eye open, everything's a playbook now. I'm like, all right, cool. And I do like when people do, I love it when I go to workshops, is people will tab different sections so they can refer back to it and be like, okay, I'm doing user research. So that makes me happy to hear that, you know, people are referring back to it that way. That's the intent, because I know you're not always going through the process. You know, it's like, who knows when you're going to be doing user interviews or when you're going to be doing segmentation. So back to your question, you know, it's how do you make time or resources for some of the activities? That's the interesting thing is that's pretty pervasive, Al, that a lot of companies, they emphasize delivery and building. They emphasize delivery and building, and they don't, if you just look at like a pie chart of how they're allocating their time between, say, discovery, design, and delivery. We can even throw QA in there if we want. Almost all of them in a lot of companies is just like 80+% delivery, if not 90+% delivery. So it's a little unfortunate. That's just how it is. Now, part of it, you could argue that why is that? You could say, why is that the case? Well, it's just the culture of the company. And why is that? Well, it's probably from the founders. Maybe they never worked in a place where they saw good discovery and good design going on. Maybe they're young, maybe they're inexperienced, maybe they're engineers, so they do it, you know, it's like a hammer looking for a nail. I just build. But as I mentioned in the book, like if you just go and build something, it's like ready, fire, aim. It's like just that's the riskiest thing that you can do, or like you're setting yourself up to have a low ROI on your resources. So I think it's really, frankly, the short answer is it's cultural. You know what I mean? And there's a, you know, saying like culture eats strategy for breakfast, basically. So it's like you can have the best, you know, strategy and all that. But if people just don't want to do it, and it can be tough if you're just a PM in an org like that, you know, can you change the direction of the ship of the whole company and how they act and behave? It can be challenging, right? So I think you should try, and, you know, you can try to build awareness and understanding of discovery and design with people. Sometimes that can work. You can, you know, recommend books, you can recommend videos, you can bring in external speakers. I mean, a lot of times I will be talking to a product leader, not a PM, but a product leader who feels like their organization that is a little too imbalanced on the delivery side, and they've been championing, and then they'll bring me in to do a workshop. And a lot of times having an external expert, it's just not them saying it. It carries more weight and can help a little bit. But, and then the other thing, I hate to say it, but sometimes there's only so much you can do. And if you find yourself in an organization that is truly not customer centric, doesn't value discovery, doesn't value design and PM, and you've tried to change it as much as you can, you know, it might be better just to vote with your feet and go somewhere, you know, that is more customer centric. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Someone else has more feedback for the book as well?
I do. I was like, Carlos, you must have, like, you know, read my mind or read our company, I guess, goals for the month, because we are actually doing our own book club on this book. So nice. I got the email. I was like, sweet. And so what's great about it, I think, Dan, is really, you know, is that it is a tactical way to, you know, to carve out, you know, what is product management from a day-to-day perspective. And, you know, I've been a product manager for almost 9 years, and it was a great, I just kind of learned on the job. I think like a lot of people probably did. And so it was great to like open this book and be like, oh yes, okay, yeah, we're doing that. No, oh, you know what, we're not doing that. And so it was a great kind of reminder and just a great opportunity to kind of review sort of in one place, like all of the principles of product management and all the things that you know, we should be considering. And I think you know, what's also great about it is, you know, new product managers. We have, you know, kind of a younger, inexperienced team of product managers at my company. And so in doing this book club and reviewing a couple chapters at a time each week, we're coming out with like actionable items for us to improve the product management process at our company. And so, you know, a lot of that, it just has to do with, I think previously, Al, you were talking about, you know, being at a company where they're not maybe championing, you know, maybe discovery, user discovery versus like delivery. And we're definitely in that place because we've been growing so quickly. And so, you know, talking about, hey, maybe we should review some, you know, some UX, some designs with some users. We should do user interviews. Let's talk to our users. Oh my gosh, you know, like things like that that are pretty straightforward and pretty, you know, pretty foundational from product management. A lot of companies aren't doing. And so I think, so yeah, just being able to review chapters at a time and review with sort of like mentoring and being able to provide that to kind of a younger audience or a more inexperienced audience has been super helpful and has provided actionable items for our team. And I think, so that's my feedback. And I think one of the things like from like my question is, you know, from a, you know, someone who's been a PM for as long as I have, one thing that I haven't really ever like formalized at any company is the use of personas. And I'm like guilty of that, the other perspective. And so I'd love to just, I don't know, like, I read the section about personas, and it's certainly something that's come up at our company, but I'd love to just talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it. When I hear the words tactical and applicable, I love that. Makes me happy because that's what it's all about. Like, you know, I try to make things actionable, like whether it's my workshop or my talk or my book, that like, as soon as you're done reading that chapter, you can go apply it. That's what I don't, you know, sometimes you go and see a speaker, they've got beautiful slides and like, they tell you a nice story, but then at the end of the talk, you're like, what can I do differently? So that makes me happy. And also the word comprehensive. It is a thick book. And I was like, if I'm going to write a book, I want to put like pretty much the whole enchilada in there. And so I think that does both make me very happy. On the personas thing, so it's funny. I was just clearing out my garage and I was going through some old books and boxes. And one that came up is one of the 4 books that I referenced, which is The Inmates Are Running the Asylum. And I don't know, have you read that one, Leslie?
You know, it's funny. It's in my queue. It's in my Amazon queue to buy. So I haven't read it yet.
Okay. So here's the deal. That's by Alan Cooper. He is not if you had to like acknowledge one person for promoting persona usage and how to use them, it's Alan Cooper. So and early in my career, in my product management career, it was, you know, it's been out for a while. So back when I was a PM in the late 90s, there weren't that many books on UX design or anything really, right? So his book was good, and I would recommend it and I referred to it. So I cover a little bit. The couple of things, mistakes with personas. One is to not do them at all, which it sounds like you guys want to start doing them. The one thing you want to avoid, 2 things you want to avoid that I see people do is a lot of it. Let me actually go back to gallery view and see here, just to do a quick survey here. Who has had a bad experience with personas before? Anybody had had personas that weren't so good at their company? Anybody? So a couple people got their hands up. So either the 2 extremes are you don't have them at all, Leslie, and the other extreme is you have these rich, robust profiles. Like, Dan is a Capricorn and he likes long walks on the beach at midnight. And it's like, what, like, basically like whoever created it was like a frustrated fiction writer. And they didn't have any data to go on, so they just started making stuff up. But so what's the problem with that? The problem with that is it's not evidence-based. You want it to be data-driven or evidence-based. And beyond that, you want it to be relevant. The whole point of this is to help inform product decisions. Like whether I'm a Capricorn, unless we're building a horoscope product, whether I'm a Capricorn or not is not going to help us, right? So you don't, you want to avoid like that kind of extraneous information. And so that's it. And then the last problem is sometimes I'll roll into a client and I'll be like, do you have personas? I'm like, oh yeah, we got personas. Here's our 13 personas. If you're swimming in personas, then you're like, which one do we focus on? So you got to prioritize basically, right? So 0 is too few, you know, like more than 5 is probably too many. Even if you have 5, you want to basically like prioritize, right? So yeah, give me one sec. I'll pull up a couple of slides to share on that front. And so there's this idea, there's a term, there's plenty of terms in the UX space, but there's a term called a proto-persona. And a proto-persona is just like your MVP persona. It's like your V1, bare bones, what matters the most. And my favorite adjective is salient characteristic. What are the salient attributes? What matters? Like not Capricorn or the beach. What are the critical few salient attributes that matter? And so give me one sec to pull up a slide. And I'll pull this up. I just got to find it. Let's see if it's in this one. Because I see it's not in the deck that I had here. Let's see. Hold on. Is it in here? No, it's not in that one either. Okay. See, I only get to go deep on personas when I give a longer workshop. Let's see here. I got one here. But I'll throw this up in the meantime while we're waiting. So here's the example of the persona in the book, right? Now this is pretty fleshed out. This is not your MVP persona, basically, right? And I'll show you an MVP persona. I'll show you in a sec what it would be. But here's one that I did for a client that I was excited about, because what we were going round and round, and we had multiple personas. And I basically, after talking with them, we got clarity on what are the salient attributes. And the salient attributes were age, how much free time they had, and how much disposable income they had. Those were the three things, right? And we came up with 3 segments. And the other thing is, as Alan Cooper likes to say, like, you know, the average number of children per family in the United States is like 2.3, but no family has 2.3 kids.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're like, okay, so I always like to, you know, people make the mistake of like, okay, we said that the persona was 55, so everyone's 55. Well, no, it's like a distribution, you know, like it's a distribution. So that's why I drew these distributions. And so like weekend warriors, they tend to skew younger, they're medium free time, and they're low. They don't have as much disposable income, right? That's the main takeaway. Busy daydreamers, these guys, you know, they skew middle, you know, not all the way older. They have less free time and they have medium money. And then the seasoned free timers, they're older, they have more free time and they have more money. That's what I mean by salient attributes, right? And this took up several meetings of going off of their personas to kind of get that clarity of what we were talking about, right? So let me pull up my other training real quick. Let's see if I can find, here we go. This should be in here maybe. Let's see. Because I want to show you like the lightweight proto persona. Hopefully it's in here. Let's see. Here it is. Cool. Awesome. Good. Found it. Okay. So here's another one. This is the bare bones. This is what I mean. Like, this is kind of bare bones. Is like what matters. The 3, in my mind, the critical elements of what before you get to the salient attributes, like kind of the summary thing, would be some label like the busy mom. Mm-hmm. Right? That just helps people. You just use that as shorthand. And the way that goes down is you're in a product team meeting. It's like, well, we could build this feature or that feature, or we could build it this way or that way. Everybody should ask themselves, and you could say it out loud, hey, what would the busy mom prefer? Because what happens, the other thing explicitly about personas, people tend to just make the assumption that they're the user or just make decisions on behalf of the user using their preferences. It's hard to get out of your own head and like get in someone. So it's helped to facilitate that. The second thing is a picture. Because we're wired, a picture, especially of a face, we're wired to like focus on faces. Like, are you going to attack me? Are you my friend? Like, you know, from a long time ago. And so we can really see faces. So that helps people remember it. And then the most important thing is probably the pain point quote. Like, what is it? What's the pain point in their own words? Right? How would they describe what the pain point is? Right? That's the idea. And then from there, I think you just want to build out your salient attributes. And these are all hypotheses, by the way. Even if you don't talk to any users, you can form hypotheses, and then you go out and you do your discovery, you talk to people, and you refine these and revise these, basically. So, hope that helps. But read The Inmates Are in the Asylum. It's an old book, but it's a good book.
Cool. Hey, Dan, this is Alan. Great book. I read it twice, and it was better the second time I read it.
All right.
Which was recently this past summer, and then referenced it later again in the summer. And when I referenced it, one of the things I got confused with was around the value proposition section.
Okay.
I noticed, and it was great that you mentioned in the beginning, because I noticed like your explanation around value prop was brief compared to other resources.
Yeah.
And so I'd be interested in knowing like how you expanded upon it. And then my second part was on my second read, I did get confused in terms of how you applied it with the search engines, but it was probably because I was speed reading it or whatnot.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give you that feedback.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah.
And then
go ahead. Sorry.
Third part is how do you think about product vision versus value prop? I can distinguish by time and the level of customer detail, but those are my 2 things, I guess.
Okay.
Thanks.
So yeah, a couple things. I think the search engine example, so that is the one tangible, is interesting because in the early days of search, like I was living through that, nobody knew what matters the most for search engines, right? You had Yahoo and InfoSeek and Google duking it out, and they're placing their bets. They're placing their bets on different aspects. And so I was just trying to use that as an example of, hey, at the end of the day, what mattered the most was relevance. And Google won on relevance because of PageRank. So you can tie it to the solution, the technology that they had, but really people were trying to compete on other factors at the end of the day didn't matter. Then beyond that, I have a generic example. Let me pull up my slides. Generic example, but long story short, if you want to, I do cover value prop. There's a talk I gave at Mind the Product here. If you go to danolsen.com/speaking or just danolsen.com and click on speaking, there's this talk I gave at Mind the Product where I shared an example of a value prop for Instagram. And I also kind of set up, it's kind of fun because on the one hand, it's a big audience, so I couldn't have it be as interactive as I wanted. So I kind of had, but Instagram you can do. And then I have a homework assignment at the end. It's like a do-it-yourself thing where I share for Uber. So it might be really fun. What I did is I put up the kind of material you needed to figure out the value prop for Uber, but I didn't provide the answer. And I said, hey, whoever can send me the right answer first wins a copy of my book. And so people kind of sent me the answer. So that might be fun. You'll get to see an Instagram example, and then you'll have the raw materials to kind of do your own, to kind of quiz yourself on value prop for Uber. If you go, again, Daniel, this talk right here, Mastering the Problem Space, that's the one that I'm talking about. Let me pull up value prop here. And okay, so for value prop, we're using the Kano model categories of must-have, performance, and delighter. And we're forming a value prop grid. This is the generic example from the book where we list one per category, one per row, must-have, performance, and delighters. Then we list our column for each of our competitors. We score our competitors, right? And we figure out what our strategy should be. And what matters the most is what are unique differentiators. You don't compete on must-haves, right? So what matters the most is where do you plan to outperform everybody else? And what are your unique delighters? That's what we want to know, because the next step in the process is MVP. So we want to know, what should our MVP have in it? The features in it. We better have some features that support these things, or else what are we doing in our MVP, right? So, and then if you keep going, like I said, I won't spoil it because it's in that talk, but there's an Instagram example, and then there's also an Uber example, basically, right? So in there, not in the talk that you go look at. Now back to your question about product vision. At the end of the day, when I give product strategy talks, it's the same grid. So it's really, I call this the product strategy grid and the value prop grid. It just kind of depends on the time frame, as you said. You can plan way further out, and if you have a longer time frame, it's more product strategy. And actually, in the book, I haven't covered this in any of my talks. This shows, like, it's helpful to pick a time period for this analysis that you're doing. When are you going to accomplish this, right? So it's a little bit ambiguous. In the book on value prop, I actually showed how you can like plan ahead, and you can have, it's probably not going to come through very well, but like now versus within 1 year, right? So you do this whole analysis for now, and then you do the whole analysis for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, however far out you want to project. I said, skate where the puck's going to be. You try to project what people are doing, right? And then you can kind of, because they're not going to be static and sit there. They're going to try to make improvements as well. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the value prop.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi, Dan. Olena here. My takeaways are basically, so like putting a framework kind of on knowledge or like use cases I already knew or used. But I have a few highlights and some difficulties. So like one of the things was this graph with scanner model and wow effects and must-haves and stuff. That was like a difficulty for me to kind of grasp it all, especially the graphs. And I would probably like to see a different visualization of a sort, but that took me kind of more time and energy to digest. And as for highlights, it's like, so the favorite graph is 7. Like I don't have a reference for the other one, but the 7.1 figure, the MVP pyramids. That was great.
Oh yeah.
Like that is just hilarious, and you like look at it, and it's like, yes, that's what you want to have. Another one was about outdated tools. That was like seriously, like just because the saving time. I think it was like something like you can save time if you switch to newer tools or you research those. This is like my personal takeaway, not only for like product, but just generally, I think work. Then another thing was about don't guide user on tests. That was like, I mean, I think it's also useful for like any interviews you do, whatever, like for job or whatever. You just need to kind of watch people do things, and like this is having a pure data, not kind of disturbed. Another thing was about this, like kind of review the pyramid when you want to pivot, or you cannot reach the market fit. So you don't redo just UX, you actually go to the fundamental and you kind of, do it all again. And and another one was, also like choosing the things that you don't address. That was like also like something to remember always, because sometimes it's like overwhelming. People would just suggest, like if you would plan to develop, like example from my experience was like I have still an idea. So to have a kind of product, and I started to share it with everybody and kind of gathering all the inputs people would give me. And like some people would just be just suggestive. Other people would be like, no, definitely this is not going to work. You should work on this idea I had a while ago. So they would just go and force you to something else. And then you're sitting there and like, no, I think like, I mean, I should probably write it down, but still stick to certain kind of limit, because I cannot do it all, because like everybody suggests something. So that I saw the part which is like not how to say, you cannot emphasize it long enough or enough at all. Just about just focusing on things and not trying to fix it all or do it all. So yeah, those are my kind of
Great.
outtakes.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing your feedback. I appreciate it. Yeah. So this is a pretty popular slide, the MVP one.
Yeah.
The genesis of this, to give people credit, is Aaron Walter's book, Designing for Emotion. He was the head of user experience design at MailChimp. And then Jesse Passanen kind of modified it, and I modified theirs. I actually recently hosted Aaron at my meetup. He's like light years ahead of everybody. So back, his book is like 10 years ago. He was talking about delight. The whole point of the one pyramid, his pyramid, was to elevate the discussion from usability to delight, right? That was the idea. So if usability answers the question, can people use your product? Delight answers the question, do they want to use your product? How do they feel when they're using your product, right? And that's kind of the best in class product teams and products have evolved to, of course they take usability for granted. Now we're focusing on delight. Well, his new book, or the new version of his book, basically, he did the second edition. He kind of is like even going beyond that and just kind of talking about invoking emotion. And talks about different emotions and things like that. So anyway, I would recommend, I'm gonna, this slide that I put up here.
Is the second version of this one of Designing for Emotion? Did you mention?
Yeah, it just came out. Yeah, it just came out in the summer, and so I hosted him. That's a good thing about taking my meetup virtual, is my speakers don't have to be in the Bay Area now. So if you go, and the other thing I should say, if you want to see these videos, they're on my YouTube. If you go to youtube.com/Dan Olsen, you can see all the videos. And so his will be recent. It should be, let's see where it should be recent. If I go ahead, he's probably right there. Where's he at? There he is, right there. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's from 3 months ago. Anyway, so you can see that. So I can put that in the chat as well, so people can check it out.
Nice. Yeah. I also wanted to echo what we just said. I think because some of the people that joined were also, I'm joining to hear about the book to see if I get convinced to read it. So another reason for the ones that are still not convinced, besides it's been very well, all the frameworks and things that have been mentioned already, I also really like it, and I also keep it on my desk always because it has so many references to other books or to other tools or other things that you can read to get more in depth, that yeah, I always recommend it to every new product person on my team, or the person that hasn't read it. I always recommend it. So yeah, that's also another thing I really enjoyed from the book. Are there any other questions, feedback from others?
I have a couple of questions. Hi everybody. Hi Dan. So first of all, I love the book. So I read it in, I don't know, less than a couple of weeks. So very relatively quickly.
Okay.
So, there are a couple of questions that I have anyway. One is that, you know, there are the two models that you refer to. One is about when you score the opportunity, which you mentioned before, and you have the impact versus satisfaction. And then the Kano model, which is used to build the value proposition. So I'm trying to find, so for me, somehow the two are, I'm not saying how exclusive. I mean, you can although they have different elements, but somehow they're trying to do the same jobs in terms of help you to identify a prioritized opportunity. But then because for the value proposition, you use the Kano and you're not using the impact versus satisfaction. Yeah. So I'm trying to see whether I can relate the two together somehow.
Yep. That's great. And I get that question. And some people just kind of learn each one and they don't realize it. So here's the importance. It's importance versus satisfaction, just to make we're clear. So it's importance versus satisfaction. What you want to do here, and that's why I like the heat map, is you want to get something. The whole point of this is you want to basically like take your ideas, write down the benefits, and just plot them where you think they are, right? And you want to validate that with user research. And you're trying to two things. You're trying to identify which ones are in the upper left quadrant, and eliminate the ones that aren't. Like you do not want to work on a low importance feature, so benefit. So that would be, I'm just as happy to learn that something was not important, than that I'm not going to waste any more time on it. And likewise up here. So there's the way to think about this, Michaela, is a two-step filter. We're trying to filter out the bad ideas and keep in the good ideas that are. What does good mean? That we believe are going to create customer value, right? And so basically the hotter the color here, the more customer value, the opportunity. So the first step is we run it through the importance versus satisfaction filter, and we only keep the ideas that are in the upper left. That's step one. Step two is, and then we need to go do the value prop, and we better have a good answer on competition, because this has nothing to do really with competition specifically. So it's a really harsh, strict criteria, but the point is you gotta have importance versus satisfaction filter, and then you have to have a good answer on how you're going to be better than the competition. So that's the idea. It's a double filter, right? So not that one here. It's a double filter where at the end of the day, if this benefit two, well, let's say benefit one, if competitor A is really good and that's the one that was in the upper left, but we don't know how we're going to be better than them, then you got to go back to the drawing board. So hopefully the stars aligned that like this was the benefit that was high importance and low satisfaction. That would make sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Although already the satisfaction somehow should also incorporate some element of a competition, in the sense that, you know, people are satisfied against the other and existing solution. So that's bring the competition, or some kind of alternative solution. So might not be a direct competitor, but can be some kind of alternative. So there is an element of that as well, but maybe it's more rough cut rather than.
It's a rough. It's not looking at specific competitors. You're right, because basically, like wherever the best product is, then the area is how much the opportunity is how much is to the right. So in a sense, there's a little bit, but you're not really getting clear on how are we going to be better than those guys. And so the value prop gets you really clear on how are we going to create more customer value than the other people going after these needs. That's the idea, basically, right? So that's the idea. So it's a double filter. It's pretty harsh, but I'll tell you, anything that gets through the double filter, you are going to have a high degree of confidence going to create customer value, right?
No, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And if people allow me, I have a second question as well. The second question instead is more how you know, we discuss a lot about problem needs and then you know, around users, personas, etc. However, although I find it covering the examples that you provide, the element, where do we bring the element of the business? I mean, while in the optimization, the last session of the book, there is a lot of reference of revenues, profit, so how that align with the business metrics. In the first part of the book, particularly when we are trying to do the discovery and come up with a concept, eventually have to link back also to your business strategy and also what, you know, are you going to make money out of it somehow? Otherwise, there is no point to do it. So where do you bring that element? Where do you see that element coming into place?
Yeah. So yes, and I get that question sometimes. The idea here, as I mentioned in the beginning of the book, there's multiple types of risk or uncertainty when you're going to do new product or business. There could be pure technology risk, like we're trying to land people on the moon or on Mars or something, or we're trying to invent a new vaccine. We don't even know if it's possible or not. There could be, you know, we're trying to invent some new supercomputer that doesn't exist, or quantum computing or something. That would be an area where there's the technical risk is very, very high, right? I would argue for many web applications, the technical risk it's just not that high. It's a front end, it's a database, it's an app. Yeah, sure, we got to build it smarter, we got to scale it, but the technical risk is not as high. There's product market fit risk, which is, you know, if we build this, is it going to actually create value for somebody? There's business model risk of like, hey, can we capture the value that we create? So the high level simple framework I mentioned in the book is the idea of you're going to create value for customers. We call it value creation. And then your business model or your revenue model is how you capture that value, right? And it's just kind of like economics theory. If we're going to create this much value for customers, you know, we can't charge more than that. We probably have to charge some percentage of that, right? If I build a tool that saves you 10 hours a week, and you value your time at a certain dollar per hour, then I can charge you, you know, maybe 60, 70, 80% of that, and you'll go for it, right? So, so there are different risks. My book is focused on product market fit risk. Which I think is the biggest reason products fail. It's usually not tech risk or, you know, or these other risks. It's just, you just never really solved the problem that created enough customer value, your solution. So that's the idea. So this approach is based on the premise that, you know, and I think especially these days, there are plenty of business models out there, proven business models for e-commerce, right? For SaaS, for advertising. There's just proven business models. I think in general, there is a risk of a theoretical risk that you're going to create all this value, but then you're not going to be able to capture it. Yeah. I think that's a much lower risk than the product market fit risk. But if for some reason that was a big risk, then by all means, go mitigate that risk first. Go explore that risk first, right? If we're trying to get people to Mars, maybe we wouldn't start out with discovery interviews. Hey, do you want to go to Mars? We'd be like, hey, what would it take technically? Can we do it? So whatever the biggest risk is, you want to mitigate that. And you might just want to do, like, for new ventures, whether it's a new startup or a new product line for an existing company, you might just want to do a high level back of the envelope spreadsheet calculation, just high level, say, how many users will we need at what price point to make this meaningful or interesting, you know, or how many of these will we have to sell, just to make sure you've got some high level answer that will work, assuming you can create something that you can charge that much for. So that's kind of my answer to that. And yeah, as you said, in the later chapters, we explicitly talk about optimizing business value. And I think the other thing is, far too often, especially in mature companies, they focus too much on business value. It's all about how can we grow revenue, and they forget about the customers, right? So I think, again, the business tends to take care of itself, and the technology tends to take care of itself. So it's like, who's looking out for customers and problems? So anyway, that's my take on that.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. Hi, Dan. It's
Hi.
been a time reading the book. I think this is the shortest ever I've read a book. It's hardly a week. So, and it
all
was
right,
great.
Good job. Did you finish in a week?
Yes, almost. It's 80% done. So I have
good job.
Yeah. So I have a question. Before going to the question, I want to talk about how this book has been useful, because I think given a lot of Indian startups, I am from India, so we are working on a lot of product principles inculcating this. And I think the book has been a great foundation for us. And looking forward to implement a lot of this in the product org that I'm working as well. With respect to the question, I have a question on the value prop, specifically when you were talking about the differentiator, exactly the slide that you're presenting. So there are scenarios where, say, for example, there's an established market, there's an established use case and customer benefit. Say, for example, we can take social networking platforms. But what happens is that when a big competitor comes into an already existing market, there's always a case where the differentiator probably is not a top of mind for them. Say, for example, when Google Plus came into when Facebook was well established, right? So in those scenarios, I think people come with an assumption that I have existing base, which probably is pretty big enough to accommodate any new competitor as well. So, but a lot of times we fail. Even I've tried in a lot of my products as well, but some of the times it may not work as it is. Breaking into an established market, but being a big player already in something else. So, any take on that perspective? If you don't have a big differential.
Yeah, no, I think it's, so just to recast it, it's like several times, there are several examples of a company that has a big successful user base in one space saying, hey, let's go into this other space that these other people are the leaders in, and then they fail. And you mentioned Google Plus in versus Facebook, for example, right? I would argue that's why I like to start in the problem space. There was no problem space in any of the logic there. The logic was just, we can get our users to use this new social network, but why the hell would they? Like, why would they? What's the differentiator? What's the value prop? And so it's just like the whole, if you build it, they will come. It's just like, you know, unless there's a compelling reason, you need to figure out like why 1 + 1 = 3. How can you make 1 + 1 = 3? Why? What's extra special about them using your network versus the other people's networks? So, you know, you can't just launch a Me Too product. That's the upper left quadrant of this thing, right? That's, you know, that's the upper left quadrant here. That's a competitive market right there. You can't just go into a competitive market with a Me Too product. Like, people aren't going to switch. And there's multiple examples of that, right? Like the Microsoft Zoom, right? The Amazon phone. There's multiple examples. Like there's like this idea. It's such a big lucrative market that, you know, we surely will be able to get some percentage of that. And surely there's some brand affinity. Brand affinity doesn't cut it if you don't have a strong value product. Why the heck should somebody switch to use you, right? So I think a lot of times it's just sloppy thinking. People didn't think about what's the advantage of why they would switch to you, right? So.
Got it. I have a follow-up question on the value prop, if time permits.
Sure.
So you talk a lot about predicting the future, right? Is there any proven methodologies that you have figured out over time to like understand how to predict future in terms of disruptions, etc.?
Yeah, people just hire me as a consultant. That's how it, I'm joking.
That's a proven formula.
There's a crystal ball. Yeah, there's no, I mean, you know, I don't know about predicting the future, but what I can tell you, probably the best thing would be the more you understand your customers, then the more on top of the trends you're going to be, right? So I worked at Intuit. I started my product manager career at Intuit. And back then in the software space, you know, Microsoft was notorious for like just crushing competitors and just driving them out, like, and dislodging them from #1 spot. So, you know, the obvious, more recent example would be like the Netscape browser. The first browser that came out was Netscape Navigator, and everybody loved it. And then Microsoft just came out with Internet Explorer. They gave it away for free, and they just destroyed Netscape Navigator. Years before that, in the word processing field, before Microsoft Word, there was a product called WordPerfect, which was the leading share, right? So they had this reputation for just like, you know, knocking out leaders. Well, they competed with us at Intuit. They had Microsoft Money, we had Quicken, and they were both in the personal finance software space. And we always were one of the only examples of a company that maintained like 80% market share for a long period of time against the Microsoft behemoth. And why is that? The reason why is because we were very, very customer centric, right? We were so customer centric that we knew when our customers' needs and preferences change. So I don't know if it's going to help you predict the future, but it'll help you be closer to understanding those trends. So I think being customer centric is really important. And you do want to keep an eye on competitors, but not blindly. Like far too often, I say Microsoft actually would do this with Microsoft Money. We'd put out a new feature, they would just blindly copy it. They would just blindly copy it, typos and all. So you can see, like, if we had a typo in our screen, they would have a typo in their script. Like, so what are you doing when you blindly copy someone? When you see a competitor doing something and you copy it, you're assuming they know what the heck they're doing. You assume they talk to customers. You assume they figured out it's like in the upper left quadrant. You assume they figured out the Kano model for it. Most of the time they didn't. They're just throwing darts at the wall, to be honest with you, right? And not that many teams are following the methodologies that I lay out in my book. So anyway, it's not really predicting the future, but you'll be closer to predicting the future than anybody else by being very, very customer centric and being on top of your customers and understanding your market and kind of plotting, like thinking about the trends and doing a value prop like 3 years out, doing that future value prop like I did, like I was talking about. So I hope that's helpful.
Hey Dan, this is Sheetal. I just wanted to quickly thank you for this wonderful book. I'm an aspiring PM, so this has been a great learning resource for me. It's very specific, and the step-by-step guidance has made it very effortless and easy to understand. And being a business systems analyst, there's a lot of it that I can relate to. And some things that I really liked was the customer discovery phase where you ask the right questions. And I really like the fact how you describe the open-ended versus the closed questions. And I think I have made the mistake myself of asking rhetorical questions instead of asking the right questions. So I think that was really good. One thing which is not really about the book, but I was just wondering if you have any tips on, like when you interview for a role, how do you know that the company is truly focused on product or it's driven by product? Like, bigger companies, you do know that, like mature companies, but if it's a startup, how would you know that? Do you have any tips on that?
Definitely. And I would just actually challenge the assumption that big companies are always the product or customer centric as well. They're not. And it's an important thing. It's interesting because when you're trying to get a PM job, you want to try to get the job. But on the flip side, you'd love to know, well, how product centric or customer centric are they really? Because you might get the job and be excited to get in there and realize, oh my gosh, it's engineering centric or it's sales centric. And I'm really just kind of, I'm just like documenting requirements, but we're not actually talking to customers. So I would just say that general thing of how empowered product management is something to try to suss out, and that was important to me. I mean, I remember even when I was interviewing back in the day, you want to go to a place where product management is empowered, because then you can do the kind of things like make sure you are spending enough time on discovery, make sure we are being customer centric, make sure we are, paying attention to design. If you're in a sales driven organization, sales is going to tell you what to do. Hey, I just signed this contract. Here's what you got to build, PM. Go tell the engineers to build this. Or engineering centric, like, hey, we think this is cool, so we built this stuff. Okay, but can we talk to some customers, right? So it is important. And I would say that in general, the two things I would say is try to ascertain how customer centric they are. You can ask them about what kind of customer research they typically do. When's the last time they did it? What did they learn from it? What surprised them? Those kind of things. And it's interesting because a lot of companies, the other thing I see is they want to be customer centric, but they lean too much on quantitative data. They lean on analytics, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we got tons of customer analytics. I'm like, okay, but when's the last time somebody on your team actually talked to a customer? So, that may be a harsh question to ask in an interview, but just asking about their general customer research. And then you can also get into like UX design a little bit too. That can be telling. That's another hole you fall into. And you can just say, hey, so, and then that's that. And then the other way on the other side is, you can ask, if you say, hey, are you sales centric or engineering centric or product centric? They're probably going to tell you product centric, or who knows what they're going to say. But so you can't ask it directly, perhaps. But what you can do is say, like, hey, how do you make product decisions? Like, how do you decide on the roadmap? Can you tell me how? So getting into how decisions are made and who has to approve it and who can veto it. You know what I mean? And then that can get into it. So whether it's a roadmap or prioritization, you can just be like, hey, how do you prioritize your features? And see what they say. And that will be very telling. If it's like, well, we get together with the engineers and we just decide, that's one answer. Or we get together with sales, or sales tells us, versus, hey, it's informed by customer research. That will be very telling, right? And you can even say things like, well, what happens, how do you when product and engineering disagree on the direction for a given feature, how do you handle those kind of situations? Or how when product and sales disagree, how do you? So it really gets down to decision making and governance kind of questions that will give you signal into how empowered different teams are and what the culture is. So those would be some tips that I would share. So.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I want to share the slide. Yeah, guys, this I just, in case it's of interest, I just scheduled, I do public workshops every once in a while. I just scheduled this one for February. And so if you're interested, this is like it's like 3-hour sessions. You can go to this URL and check it out if you. I just want to share to let people know about that real quick. And then there's early bird pricing available. And I just want to leave this slide up. If people want, I'll stick around for a few more minutes. I'm happy to stick around, but if you have any feedback, you can just hold up your phone to this QR code. It'll open up a short survey. What I'll do is I can put together a deck of the slides that I shared in our talk. And if you want to get a copy of that, just leave your email. If you don't want a copy, that's fine. Don't leave your email. But if you do, yeah. And then there's my meetup link. You know what? I'll put these in the chat, these links in the chat for people real quick too. But I just wanted to hold this up while we're taking the last few questions here.
Cool. Yeah.
I could probably have time for like another question if we want.
Yeah, we can do also the picture now, and then if people want to stick around as well, we can have maybe one more question, just aware of the time. The ones that have the book, if they can hold it, so then we can take
oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's cool. The Kindle, I like Timur's got the Kindle. I like it. Oh, everyone's got Kindle.
I don't have it here for me.
Okay, well, no worries. Okay, let me take it. 1, 2, 3. Good, thank you. Awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, maybe
Karina's got it all in her head. She doesn't need the book. She's all in her head now.
Yeah, Dan, if it's okay with you, and of course the ones that can stay, we can do one more question, and then
sure.
Yeah, we close with Dan.
Yeah.
If there is one more, or no, yeah, because I saw some people also already leaving for some sprint plannings and backlog grooming meetings. So yeah, maybe we can close it now.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Dan. I hope you found it useful also to hear the feedback from the readers. For the readers, I also hope you guys found it useful. For the ones that are still reading or are still deciding to read the book, I do recommend it. I think everyone that has read it recommend it. So go ahead, and yeah, thanks everyone. I will send the recordings. I will also send all the links that have been shared in the chat to the email, so you guys will have it there. And yeah, hope to see you in the next discussion.
Perfect.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Nice to meet you all. Yeah.